Welcome, everybody. My name is Ben Kay. I'm the Director of Product here at 7Geese, and I'm joined by Lena Hammond, who is our Senior Product Manager.
Hi, Ben, and hello, everyone.
Thanks very much, Lena. So today is the first time we're going to be doing one of these product review webinars. We're planning to do them about quarterly. A few things that we want to land during these sessions. The first is we want to talk about the big rocks that we're working on. We want to talk about what we've released over the last quarter and make sure that those are very visible for you. And lastly, we want to spend a bunch of time answering any questions that you may have on these features or stuff that we're working on into the future. So we actually have 3 parts today as part of this webinar. The first, I'm going to do a very quick intro about performance management, some of our ideas, and specifically how we believe that conversations are the biggest driver of the success of a performance management program. Then we're going to jump into the product and demo a whole bunch of new features that we've been working on. And lastly, we're going to have a Q&A that we will answer any questions that you may have about the product or product management at 7Geese. All right, so let's jump right in. So I'm not going to break any new ground at the beginning when I start talking about the shift to remote work, especially obviously over the last 8 months. What's interesting to me, though, is the effect this is having on communication. So all that really great high bandwidth communication that used to happen is now much rarer than it has ever been. Right, so high bandwidth communication is usually face-to-face. And the reason why it's high bandwidth is so much information is being transmitted. It's not just the words coming out of my mouth, but also my facial expression, my nonverbal cues. There's a ton of information that gets transmitted when you have a face-to-face conversation. When you have low bandwidth communication, things like email, chat, asynchronous video, a lot of that gets lost. Recently, I read that a face-to-face request is 34 times more successful than just sending an email or sending a Slack message. And as we start shifting to these more low bandwidth communications, we're going to see some major challenges start to happen when it comes to communication, right? Collaboration is going to be tougher. Staying connected is going to take real work rather than just happening organically. It's going to be really hard to create accountability, and it's going to be much easier to mistranslate what's being said. In the shift to remote work, we're going to really have to take advantage of the moments we have and the conversations that actually end up having. Secondly, there's more cross-functional work starting to happen and more of a reliance on teams. Now that's fine when we think about it in a very small group. Something like 84% of managers say they really rely on their boss and their direct reports and their peers all or most of the time. What gets interesting though is between business units, it's much less. Only about 9% of managers say they can rely on their colleagues in other functions or business units, and just half so that they can rely on them most of the time. That's just about the same as an external vendor. So people have the same amount of trust in other functional units as they do with an external supplier or an external distributor. As teams become more important, this is going to become a bigger and bigger issue. And the third big thing that we're starting to see is this idea of information overload and just more and more tools being used by knowledge workers. And there's a huge cost to that information overload, right? People get distracted, they're making more errors, they're trying to multitask against a whole bunch of things, they're running around just trying to triage any issue that comes up. And as a result, employees are accomplishing less, and therefore businesses are accomplishing less. Strategic priorities are taking a back seat to small attention-grabbing tasks. The nut is that work is becoming more complex and will continue to become more complex as as these trends start to accelerate over the next few years. And as work becomes more complex, employees are struggling to keep up and execute. And in my job, I talk to a lot of prospects who are talking to us, who are looking for a performance management tool. And I talk to a lot of our existing customers. And often what they're talking about are the symptoms to these problems, right? These symptoms like missed goals, these like misalignment or duplication of work, a lack of visibility, focus, accountability, low employee engagement or churn. To us, those are all symptoms though, and the real root of this execution problem is really an organizational communication gap. Now, the obvious question is, what is an organizational communication gap? So we think about that across three different vectors. So the first is vertical, and that is between a leadership group and the rest of the organization, and really the other way too. So an organization communicating back up to a leadership group. We think about that horizontally, so between functional units, the way that they communicate and align, or the challenges that they have doing that. And lastly is intra-team. So between a manager and their employees, or in an empowered team between employees themselves who are self-managing. What we're seeing is that managers and peers often have a really hard time having challenging conversations, delivering the company norms, being vulnerable, recognizing achievement, giving clear direction, right? That's what we're talking about around that communication gap in an organization. So we at 7Geese spend a ton of time thinking and talking about how to help companies have better conversations and close this communication gap. So what makes a good conversation? It's no different than our personal life, right? I think about the great conversations I've had with family or with friends. What is it about those conversations that become meaningful? Well, first of all, they're interactive, right? So it's not just talking with someone, or it's talking with someone, not at them, right? So it's a two-way conversation, right? I'm listening and responding, and so are they. It's intimate, right? So you're speaking directly with authenticity, right? It's built on trust. There's not a lot of bias there, and most importantly, is that it's interesting, and there's an investment in the conversation. It's a conversation with intention. So my wife often tells me that she often just wants me to listen to the problem, not to solve it, just to listen, right? And there's a real intention to that conversation that we need to share. It has to be a shared agenda. And when we have different views about what that conversation is going to be, is when things start to break down. So intention means that there's a shared agenda. And then for us, often it means that it's context rich. There's a lot of background and understanding, and that there's safety and psychological safety between the two participants. And lastly, it's inclusive. There's no power imbalance between the two people, right? In the business place, that means that it can be bottoms up and employee owned, and that there's a shared language that both people really understand. So at 7Geese, we're working hard to give you the context, content, and tools to have these better conversations. And these better conversations are the way that employees perform better and actually grow within their careers. All right, so enough of the preamble. We're going to jump into the product and show you some of the new features that we have. And as we do so, we're going to try and connect it to this bigger idea of better conversations. We're going to jump into the 7Geese application. Hopefully this should be fairly familiar. The first thing I wanted to talk about is our new navigation and UX. So as you can see, we've moved the navigation from the top to the left-hand side. Right now, this is an option for each individual employee to choose whichever one that they prefer. As you may have seen, we now allow you to have custom branding up in the top left corner, and as well as the colors within the left-hand nav. And you can make those changes in your organizational settings under custom branding. You can choose any color you want for the logo background color, as well as the brand colors, which is a subtle shading within the actual left-hand nav. You can also upload an image or just use plain text if you prefer. You can also choose whether you want the light mode or the dark mode, depending on which you prefer. You'll also notice that a lot of the fonts and colors within the app, as well as a whole bunch of other small changes, are updated to give it a cleaner, more modern feel throughout the app. All right, so that's the left-hand nav and our new UX. We hope you guys like it. The second thing we're going to be talking about is a complete refresh of our review product. Or the big change is this idea of a new peer feedback as part of the review. As we started down this road, we thought about what a review actually was and what would make it more valuable. At the end of the day, what a review is a conversation between an employee and a manager. And one of the things that makes that conversation more valuable is when there's more context to have that conversation, more information to make it a stronger, better conversation. Which is why we've introduced this idea of peer feedback as part of the review. As an admin, you can easily click on the button. You can call that stage, that step, whatever you want. We have nominations for who will be giving that feedback. Managers will be responsible for nominating peers for each employee. You can add some instructions for the manager. You can choose a template that is separate from the review template, as well as setting a deadline. So as a manager, this is what I would see. First of all, I'm asked to nominate people for my employee. I can search by name and add whoever I feel would be a really good peer to that employee. As you can see, it also says how much feedback they've already been asked. So I can make some choices about whether they'll be overburdened. So it looks like in this case, Andrea is giving feedback to a bunch of other people. I don't think I want her to be included, so she's not overburdened. You'll notice that this whole reviews overview page has been completely refreshed. New look, new feel. While before, some of your actions were a little bit buried within the UI, now everything comes to this front page, and it almost becomes like a to-do list for the review. You can also have a box up here that shows any reviews that you currently have in motion. So peers give feedback, and then it comes directly into the review. We've added a tab called peer feedback. This is not shared with the employee until the manager has had a chance to review and potentially edit the report. So you can see the responses that have come in for this employee. I, as the manager, now have an opportunity to edit the draft. I can add an introduction if I wanted to. So this is your peer feedback. I can choose to not include a question in the report if I want. I can not include a specific answer. I can also add any notes to provide additional context on the responses that were gathered in that feedback. And that's all reflected directly in this peer feedback tab, as well as the introduction, as you can see, and the changes I made in terms of what feedback is actually included. Once I submit my responses, this is shared directly with the employee once they have completed their portion of the review. And that is the new peer feedback in reviews. More to come on our revamp of reviews. But again, we think this is, you're gonna love it as part of this new launch. All right, the next big innovation that got released this quarter was our company and team surveys, which is under the feedback menu. So you can see that right here. It's a new area in the sub-nav. We, as I talked about earlier, there's this idea of vertical communication between a leadership group and their employees. But often what's a struggle is getting data and getting information and having that conversation back upwards. This is a great way to get a data, get context for a conversation directly from an employee group. So you can launch a new survey. You can choose whatever template you've either created, or you can start without a template. I would like to do an employee engagement survey, so I'm going to use that template. I can choose different groups, whether it's everyone or whether it is a certain team. I could also go by locations or by individuals. In this case, I'm going to send it out to everybody. I'm not going to allow anybody to view the responses right now. I can make changes in the future, but I don't want them to see any responses until I've had a chance to review them. I can put in a response deadline. So I'm going to put it in for next week. And then you can see the different types of questions you can ask. Very similar to what you see in feedback, where we have opinion scales, number scales, open text, multiple choice. And most important for me is an ENPS question at the very end. And very easily, I can send that off to the entire organization. So I'm going to go back. I sent a similar one out earlier today, and I've got 9 responses back already. From those responses, I can start building a report. Again, I can choose what I want included in the report, as well as add any notes. Lots of strong agreement here. I am going to share that report. I can choose who to share with, who to share this report with directly. I can share it with responders or a specific individual or group. I'm actually going to share it with my 360 group. It'd be the easiest thing for me, and I can share the report now. They are then allowed to view this shared report. I can always edit it in the future. I can change the visibility settings, so I can share that compiled survey. Maybe I don't want them to see anymore, and I can get rid of them. And I only want Sandeep and Sasha to be able to see it. So only they now have permission to see that shared report. You can also see I can share the raw responses directly with a specific individual or group as well. So in this case, maybe I want Andrea to be able to see the raw responses rather than just see the compiled survey, which I've already edited and contextualized. I can also view or add responders if I wanted to. I did send it to everybody, but if I wanted to add more, I could do so. And I can also see a summary as data comes in. So this survey product that we're creating is the beginning of a journey. We have a lot of ideas about where we want this to go and what information we want to have. Things like being able to cut the data by different different characteristics of each individual. Things like recurrence, we definitely heard that loud and clear, and things that we're going to be working on to make this a really helpful product and really solve a bunch of problems for organizations. Next up, we have new innovation in one-on-ones. So let's say I, as an admin, want to have managers and employees have a conversation about their objectives. So specifically, I want to know is, how are you feeling about your objectives on a scale of 1 to 10? And we'll call this new or objective feelings. So before, this would just have to be an open text question. It would be really hard for me to create some structured data from that and be able to take that away in order to do an analysis on how things are going. What we've added is the ability to make that a number scale. In this case, you can make it from 0 to 10. I can make that from 1 to 10 like I've wanted to, but you can make that number anything that you want it to be. Anything that works. I'm going to keep it at 1 to 10, and I can say very bad to very good. My other option is actually to make it a multiple choice question. So instead of making it 1 to 10, I could say very bad, bad, okay, good, and very good. So once again, I'm trying to create structured data rather than just allowing people to put in open text. So I, as an admin, or I, as a manager, can then go back and actually do some analysis on the answers that are coming through during these one-on-ones. It also helps me make sure that the conversation is being structured in the right way and the right questions are being asked by managers and employees. So let's create a new one-on-one. And I'll start with my how are you feeling template. Oops, the objective feelings template. Let me set this up. You can see these questions come in for each person. As a manager, I can also add these questions in. So how are you feeling personally? And I can make that a number scale or multiple choice in the exact same way that I did as part of the template. What we've added here, as this has gotten slightly more complicated, is a publish mode. So this will not be shared with the with the participant until I hit publish. Once I hit publish, the question will be shared with Charlie, and we'll both be able to answer. But if I wanted to make some changes, I could always do so without this automatically being triggered back to them. So in this case, I hit publish. I forgot to actually put a question in. So I'm going to ask, how are you feeling personally again? And then I'm going to hit a number scale from 1 to 10. And I'm going to say bad and good. I publish, and there it is. And when Charlie answers, it will come up here. Once again, another way to have a more structured conversation between two people as part of a one-on-one. I'm going to pause there. So we went through the peer feedback and review. We went through the new UX, UI, and left nav updates. We went through surveys. We went through new question types and one-on-ones. I'm going to hand it over to my colleague, Lena Hammond, who's going to take you through a bunch of other really great stuff that we've been working on.
Thanks, Ben. Hi, everyone. Good to see you. Next, we will talk about some new and exciting changes in our Objectives product, as well as cover the new integration with MS Teams. As Ben alluded to, having meaningful and data-rich conversations is key to establishing common understanding. And talking about the objectives in one-on-one or team meetings is a good way to achieve this. This quarter in 7Geese, we're introducing a new alignment view, which helps provide clarity on the entire structure of the objective tree. For organizations, it creates transparency around objectives and company strategy. And for teams and individuals, it allows everyone to understand how they fit into the big picture. It also enables conversations about whether objectives are realistic, aspirational, and properly resourced. You can now customize your view depending on which objectives and how much information about them you want to see. While you can view progress and status information about objectives in the normal view, the compact one is even denser and gives you a better bird's eye view. To get even more detail about an objective, you can click on it and you will see even more information about the progress and the latest updates concerning this objective. And finally, you can select to view unaligned objectives to make sure that the organization maintains focus on what matters and align them accordingly. To make it even easier to update your objectives, we're introducing a new and improved objective details page. It has been updated to give it a more modern and clean look and to highlight the most important information about your objective. Editing the objective is also more consistent and intuitive, making it quicker to accomplish what you need and reducing the amount of training needed for new users. In this case, I will align this objective. I will add a label to reflect the key focus area and move on. To give a sneak peek into what we're working on next, it's making it even easier to align the objectives in this view. Ability to drag and drop is coming up once we have the necessary polish added to it. Our next addition is the 7Geese and Microsoft Teams integration. It brings the key 7Geese updates and actions directly into MS Teams, where the rest of the conversation is happening within the organization. To set up as an admin in Microsoft Teams, I will search for the 7Geese application and I can add it to my team. To finish setting up, in 7Geese application, you can create a new notification for your team. Here you can select the channel where all the notifications will be displayed and either send check-in or recognition notifications to the same channel, different channels, or even send separate notifications based on the department that the participants are involved with. Now that the 7Geese has been set up for my team, the recognitions will be displayed directly in MS Teams so that no one misses the accomplishments of their team members. When I want to recognize Amy, I can give her some kudos. Select a core value and hit recognize. The recognition will be displayed in 7Geese as well as in my selected channel in the MS Teams application. Additionally, I can create recognitions directly from MS Teams without ever leaving. When I want to recognize somebody else, I can fill in a form, select a core value, and now the recognition will be displayed in the selected channel as well as in the 7Geese application. This not only makes it easier to keep all of the conversations in the same place where they're happening, but also reinforces organizations' desired behaviors by providing core value-based recognitions and encouraging praise from the whole team, not just the manager. I can also get more details about the state of my objectives. When I type objectives, I will see the objectives that I currently own. And from here, I can view more detail, or I can go ahead and check in if I have some updates. In this case, I've done really well. I will check in. And the objective check-ins will be visible in MS Teams as they happen to keep all of the team members up to speed.